Hi everyone. I want you all to do me a favor and imagine you wake up in Chicago in your high-rise apartment. It's a Monday morning at 6 a.m. and you're starting to run late for work. You roll out of bed, brush your teeth, run and head down the elevator to catch your Uber. But as soon as you walk out, what do you see? A snowstorm, or construction that's closed the roads for the whole day, or other important local news alerts. You're forced to go out blindly and just hope for the best. Most people take access to news for granted and assume it will always be there. Public broadcasting is one of the most accessible and trusted sources of information. It is especially important for smaller and rural communities. Reducing federal support for public broadcasting has led to a decline in local and national news coverage. First, I will explain why the government reduced funding, and then I will explain how these cuts impacted communities. Now I will explain why the government began cutting funds. Public broadcasting depends heavily on federal funding, which has been reduced. So first, let me explain what counts as public broadcasting and what counts as federal funding. So public broadcasting provides educational, informational, and non-commercial content to the public. It ensures that people have access to important information regardless of income or location. Essentially, it really emphasizes equality for all. Major examples include NPR and PBS, which is public broadcasting services. A lot of kids' TV shows play on that. What is the importance of federal funding? Well, a large portion of funding comes directly from the federal government. This funding supports over 1,500 stations across the country. It allows stations to maintain programming, staff, and daily operations. Essentially, federal funding for public broadcasting is their lifeline, and they really cannot exist without it. So now let's see why these funding cuts happened. Some policymakers believe public broadcasting is less necessary due to digital media. Things such as Instagram Reels or TikTok, people get their news from other places. Others argue that taxpayer money should not support media organizations. Instead, they could be used for better outlets. Political and economic concerns have also contributed to these decisions, as people believe that it could bias media and influence people in a way that's not neutral and not fair. So what are the effects of reduced funding? Stations have been forced to lay off employees and cut programming, and some stations have been shut down completely. This is not good for the economy, and this is not good for people in general, as people are losing their jobs. Rural communities have also been impacted the most because they rely heavily on this funding, as they don't have access to the same type of other outlets for news as we do in urban or suburban settings. In fact, in 2025, the government cut about $1.1 billion in funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This funding has supported public media for over 50 years. The shutdown of CPB disrupted content distribution and essential systems. So now that we understand the cause, let's look at the impact. Funding cuts have weakened public broadcasting and reduced access to news. Local news focuses on specific communities, while national. Let's begin by addressing what is local and national news. Local news focuses on specific communities, while national news covers the whole entire country. Many people rely on local news for important daily information like weather and safety updates. Think about the example of Chicago. Things such as road construction, things such as a snowstorm, that's not going to affect the whole country. So that will count as local news. Whereas things about the economy in general, like gas prices, that would be national news. Losing access makes it harder for them to stay informed and safe. As you can see by this graph, the y-axis is the estimated funding loss as a percent of amount of annual budget. It starts at 0 and goes up to 100. And then the x-axis are all these different public news broadcasting services. As you can see, at the highest level, Mountain Lake PBS lost almost 40%, and while others have also lost a high amount. This is specifically in New York, and shows that in one of the states that has a lot of has a high rural population besides New York City, a lot of their funding is being cut, which is terrible, and people cannot get the access to news that they need. So now let's talk about the station shutdowns. Without federal funding, many stations cannot afford to operate. Stations have been forced to cut costs, reduce services, or shut down entirely. This directly reduces the availability of both local and national news. There is a direct connection between federal funding and the decline of public broadcasting. As funding decreases, access to reliable information also decreases. They have a linear relationship. So now, in conclusion, today I explained how federal funding cuts led to the decline of public broadcasting. I also showed how these cuts impacted both local and national news access, and how communities across the country are now experiencing reduced access to information. So now, I'd like to end by saying most people do not realize how much they rely on easy access to news. Losing public broadcasting makes it hard for communities to stay informed, and this can have a long-term effects on safety, awareness, and connection. Thank you.